Florida State versus SMU. Which team gets the win?
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith. Thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in and talking Seminoles football with me. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Speaking of get started, it is Prediction Friday. Today we are going to get started by looking at some of the concerns going up against SMU on the road, talk about which players and positions for the Noles need to come out on top for the Noles to get a victory, and then finally, my final score prediction. So let's start with some of the concerns and some of the things that are going on that go against Florida State. Number one, this is an 8 o'clock kickoff. It's going to be on ACC Network and Saturday night. It's going to be a raucous crowd. It is the first ACC game for SMU as a program. That fan base is also welcoming in a program like Florida State that has so much history. That place will be lit. Florida State must come in mentally focused, something they have quite honestly struggled with for much of this season, to be nice, and they must be able to score early, not just play well, put points on the board. That is a big concern for me. If you get behind in a place like this, it can be an, oh, here we go again moment, and you can find yourself down 21-3 going into the late in the second quarter and trying to get another drive going so you're not getting completely blitzkrieged at halftime. That can't be the case. Florida State must start fast, even though all the odds are stacked against them in that regard, playing on the road. Too bad, do it anyway. You're Florida State. It's time to figure something out. That means coaches, that means players, that means trainers, that means everybody. This must be an elevated contest for Florida State, despite the distraction. However, the one good thing, you know you're going into the Lions' Den. You should be mentally prepared, and this is why you put on the garnet and the gold. If you don't want to be a Florida State player, why would you come to play in this? So with that, SMU is still not Georgia. They're a good football team. You should have the better overall roster. But that doesn't mean you're the better football team. You need to prove that in this game. Here are a few of the players that I think are concerning for Florida State and a few situations as well that I want to talk about. Number one player that I'm concerned about is Ahmad Moses. If there's one thing that Florida State fans, and rightfully so, complain about every time I do a show, it is DJ Uiagalelei. He struggles making reads. He struggles finding the guys that are open. Makes too many pre-snap decisions, focuses on a guy, etc. Well, Ahmad Moses has proven this year he's the safety for SMU that's tearing it up. He's got 3 picks in 4 games. If you get the ball around him, he will take it the other direction. 2 fears here. Number one, because it's openly noticed that he's really good, I'm concerned that Florida State's going to make a gazillion play calls that just cancel out any chance of throwing the ball in the middle of the field. That's actually one of my keys on coming up here in a minute, because if that's the case, this game is over from the outset. You will not nickel and dime SMU down the field over and over and over again. They give up big plays in the passing game because they are challenged, not because you're throwing 3-yard hitches. Florida State must challenge SMU right smack dab in the middle of the field and not just screens and bombs down the sideline. Middle of the field. Moses is going to be there. Too bad. Find a way to beat him. This is Florida State. This is not Fresno State. It's time. If DJ can't do that, as I've said on this show and millions of other people too that follow Florida State, how about you put in somebody else? So let's make sure that we're clear on that. They got to challenge this guy and they got to beat him. Ahmad Moses, the other safety, is pretty good too, but he's the one that you got to be accurate with. DJ's got to be accurate way more so than he's been many times this year. That is a major concern in this game. Also, on the other side of the ball for SMU, Kevin Jennings is a unique quarterback, not the biggest guy. He's about 185 pounds. He can run, but he usually runs on first and second downs. On third, he tries to extend plays and get a pass off. You can sack him because he might hold on to the ball a little too long sometimes. He's not super experienced. And I think Florida State bringing a multitude of blitz packages will probably give him some fits. That being stated, if you do not stay in your rush lanes, every single time Florida State plays a mobile quarterback, we have the same conversation, and Florida State struggles mightily. I'm going to say it for the record, but I'm very nervous about this. Stay in your rush lanes. Do not allow the 20-yard easy pickup on 3rd and 12. Those are the kinds of plays that change games. That might be my bigger concern, even than DJ throwing it to the wrong team, is the inability to keep Jennings in the pocket. Make him a pure pro-style quarterback. If you do that against mobile guys, they always have big errors. You should win those games. This is my biggest concern for the Florida State defense. If you get out of those lanes, it's going to be big plays for them. Also, Brashard Smith, the running back, former Miami player, transferred over with Lashley to play for SMU. Explosive, not the biggest guy, not just a pure power runner. He can break tackles, but it's about foot speed. Elite foot speed, no question about it. I think he's a guy that can score from anywhere. He might have 14 carries for 25 yards, and then after his 15th carry, all of a sudden he's got 80. If you miss a run gap fit, if you're out of position, he can torch you. Can't allow that to happen. Another guy that played in Miami, Keyshawn Smith, a kid from San Diego, it's been all over the place. Six catches, 101 yards, 16.8, and a touchdown. Another speed guy. Florida State secondary is good, but if you get beat just once in this game when you shouldn't, on a post, double move, whatever it is, it could be the indicator for which team wins the football game. Florida State just has to be consistent. Their pass defense has plenty of talent. They got young guys stepping up, like Joseph last week got his first pick. There's plenty of talent there, underclassmen, seniors, the whole 9 yard. I don't think Florida State will struggle here unless it's just that one bust. They've had some problems when it comes to switching off or who's got who when some of these receivers and tight ends cross each other, etc. That can't happen against SMU. They're going to try to do that. Pre-snap motion, pre-snap shift, unusual alignments. You're going to see a few different things that they say for Florida State. Coaches always lie and say, we don't do that. They do. Florida State's going to see plays from this offense from SMU that has not been on film. I guarantee it. They will have to adjust on the fly. You got to figure it out. My concern with that specifically is the Noles play some man defense. If you miss a switch in man, there's a guy just running completely free. Not many quarterbacks are going to miss that. So you must be sure on how you switch, who has who before the ball is snapped. That's going to be a very big factor. Finally, just the early portion of the game. Situationally, Florida State, I'm concerned that first 5 to 7 or 8 minutes, there cannot be any calamity. In other words, just a really bad 3 and out, a poor punt, which would be shocking, basically, because Mastromano is arguably the nation's best punter. But something like that being abnormal as well to compound the problem, and a short field for SMU and they score. That would be about as bad as it could get, close to catastrophic as it can get, outside of a pick six maybe. Florida State must avoid that, and they also must keep their defense off the field. SMU is going to run a lot of plays. The Noles are going to have to rotate more, and they're probably going to get pretty tired. If you have a bad start to the game and they play even more than normal, that'll put more pressure on the defense in the second part of the game, maybe even more specifically fourth quarter. The second half is an interesting way to look at it, but it's really fourth quarter because that's going to be snaps like 50 to 75, somewhere in there, especially if Florida State had a lead and SMU has to play hurry up, throwing the ball around a lot. That's hard on D linemen and linebackers, so keep that in mind. When we come back, I'm going to talk about a couple of keys for Florida State if they're going to beat SMU and make it happen for their first road win of the year. That's next on Locked On Seminoles. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season and go big with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out all the latest stats, live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. What does Florida State have to do to win overall? Let's take out the obvious. Don't turn the ball over 4 times. You got to be pretty consistent with the passing game and the running game. But what do they specifically, down in distances, players, etc., what do they need to do to come out with a victory? A couple of keys here. Number one, for me, and obviously turnovers I don't even put on the board because that's an automatic, but it's the offensive line and the running game. I talked about this a little bit last week, and I was surprised because it was better than I thought. 12 carries for 66 yards, if I remember correctly, in the first stanza. They got after it. They were nasty up front. The running backs did a nice job, Tofili in particular. But then Cal adjusted and came down in the box. That's why I talked about earlier. There has to be more effort definitively by the play calling to throw the ball in the middle of the field, all but force DJ to do it, which Florida State's obviously went the opposite direction, and that gives me pause. But if you do that against a team as talented as SMU, you will probably be in trouble. You can't mitigate any part of the field. They must respect all of it and not dive down on the box for Tofili and anybody else running the football, because it's not going to work. Secondly, the first down runs are nice, but they've got to get big plays, not just like a 3-yard here, a 5-yard there. Just be consistent. They need a chunk play to make the defense respect you and think they have to change what they're doing. Like the guys in the box for SMU have to think, man, if we don't drop a safety down now, like right off the bat, we're in trouble. From play one, Florida State's offensive line needs to be the more assertive and consistent. Is that realistic? I don't know. They did that against Cal in the first quarter, so it can be done, but then they regressed as the ball game went along. So part of that was the safeties coming down for Cal. I get that. But part of it was Cal's defense started to bow up a little bit. Will Florida State rise to the challenge for a longer period of time? That's something to watch. And I also think that especially early in the game when there's no score or very little, they've done this in the past anyway, Florida State's offense needs to be very methodical in, I know it takes time and you can't run no huddle this way, shifts and pre-snap motion, find out what, not necessarily everything that SMU is doing, but you at least find out if they're in man or zone. You got to help DJ get into a rhythm before he even takes the snap. It's not the play call. I know it's man. I know it's a zone. That will help him. And that can also lead to a bust. Florida State needs a freebie in this game if they're going to win. What I mean by that, tight end comes in motion, H-back comes in motion, jet motion from a receiver or a slot running back, something like that. Somebody going in and out of the lineup that can really run, and they save him just for a few plays. And Ja'Kai Douglas might do it too as a slot receiver. Get them in motion. Maybe they start to play behind the guard and run back underneath, and DJ hits him in the flat wide open. Something like that. Get your best players a chance to make a play early, change the momentum, add some confidence to DJ and the entire offense for that matter with play calling. It is always important, but when you're a struggling football team, especially one that's averaging 15 points a game, play calling and how you do it with the shifts and motions is huge. This one is not necessarily the most fun thing for me to talk about, but it's just time. The wide receivers have not been good after the catch for much, not all, but much of this season. It's time to break a couple of tackles and break some ankles. Florida State is not doing as well laterally, which is historically what Florida State's best at. Doing everything basically wrong is like coaches say, get upfield, just get the yards. Because Florida State's athletes are better. They go across the green and do it anyway, even though they're not supposed to, and score or get a 50-yard play. They need to help DJ if they're going to run all these short passes. You got to get yards after the catch. That's been a disaster for much of this year. That must change. Now, we'll talk about down the field passing in a second. But again, yards after catch, a 5-yard hitch, a 3-yard slant, something like that. You make the first guy miss, anything can happen. They're not even making the first guy miss most of the time. It is time for that to happen. It's kind of just due. Florida State needs a 70-yard play. Maybe it's Hakeem. Big, strong guy. He can make the first guy miss, and he's a lot faster, I can guarantee you, than what many of the SMU defensive backs are probably going to know. He can scoot. Somebody like that might take one to the house today off a basic 5-yard pass. An out pattern, a hitch, something of that nature. Do not be surprised. Next, this is one that I'm most confident in. I don't think SMU's offensive line is quote-unquote physically dominant. Not that they can't play well together and they can't scheme and they can't churn out some yards. I get that. Florida State has more raw talent. And they had 7 sacks and 12 tackles for loss against Cal last week. That's not good. That's elite. Do I think SMU is going to have as many NFL guys as Florida State? Probably not. Florida State's D-line early in the season, I didn't think any of them were going. But they have just completely flipped it around, and I don't know what's happening. But anytime you get 7 sacks against an FBS opponent, you're doing something right. I think SMU's in trouble there, and I think it's why this game could be much closer than most think. I expect SMU to hit some big plays, but I also think this game could come down to whether or not they can block Florida State, especially in the second half. I think this will be a close ball game from the moment it starts until it ends. Watch the Noles to get at least 3 sacks. Now, I'm not saying that's the end of the road. You've got to do other things, but that's part of it. And this is the add-on. When you get sacks, there's a chance for fumbles, etc. There's a chance that the quarterback starts hearing things, seeing things, anticipating too early. It's the plays after the sacks that matter, or him even getting hit. And again, he's about 6 foot, 185 pounds. He's not the biggest fella in the world. So I don't think being met, if you will, by Joshua Farmer, Darrell Jackson, Marvin Jones Jr., or Patrick Payton, among others, is on his wish list. That's when you can get your own freebies. And this, just like what I mentioned a moment ago about like the receivers, they're not taking any short passes and making plays where they go against the grain, do everything wrong technically and score or hit a big play. Well, the DBs aren't getting plays like that either. Again, law of averages. Don't you think it's about time for Florida State to be in that situation? I mean, when are they going to get a scoop and score or something like that? It's been a minute, and they've been getting to the quarterback. It's really rare to have that many tackles for loss and sacks and not get a whole bunch of picks or at least come close. There was the one that Edwin Joseph made, but there really weren't a bunch of others that were close to picks. I'm curious to see if that changes at all, because the talent level for Florida State, I still think, is higher, as I mentioned a moment ago, than SMU. I'm predicting 2 SMU turnovers in this game. Just as a little added thought, I think there will be at least 1 fumble and at least 1 interception. So we'll see how that goes. When we come back, we're going to talk about the prediction and why I came up with it here on Locked On Seminoles. There's a lot going on with Florida State in trying to figure out whether or not they've got the best opportunity with the quarterback play and all the things going on. But there's one thing I do know. Florida State has the best opportunity for themselves just to play their style of football. If you look at Florida State in the latter stages of the last game, they had a chance to lose. And I kind of thought they would. I'm guessing some of you did too. But the defense bowed up once Cal methodically, again, moved the ball down into territory to score, and then they were given a gift, a missed field goal. So when Cal got back down there again, a field goal wasn't going to do them any good. And the pass rush took over. So are you looking at a scenario where Florida State is going to be able to do that again? I don't know. It's a night game in Dallas. It'll probably be pretty warm. Crowd's going to be churning and going crazy. If it's a close game, at least the Noles have evidence. Hey, we did this last week. We could have easily lost, but we found a way to win. The offense scored a late touchdown, then the defense fended them off, and Cal went away with a loss. So there is a chance. This game, I think, will be very, very close. Brashard, Jennings, and some of those guys, they're going to make some plays. If Florida State's going to win, one of those critical players, like a Marvin Jones Jr., somebody that's not lived up to the hype yet, is going to have to take that next step. Maybe it's Conrad Hussey, a younger guy. They need a pick six or some kind of defensive special play where it's as close to, if not literally, the defense putting points on the board. I am still not, and I'm probably going to be this way all year, I am not going to believe that Florida State's going to hit 10, 12, 14, 15 play drives, march the length of the field over and over again. They're not good enough. Let's not sit here and think otherwise. I think they'll score in the 20s, and I think they'll also be able to give SMU some fits, but I need to see them do that offensively where they win a game when the defense is not on. The last couple of weeks, defense has been pretty darn good. But at the same time, they need help for now. Prove me wrong. If Florida State does not get at least, shall we say, 10 free points from the turnovers and or special teams, I think they're in trouble. I just think SMU will make more plays. They've got more offensive playmakers that are proven overall in their history / this season as well. And I think that Jennings will be the difference. I'm very, very concerned about him being elusive to pass, probably more than to run, but him being able to pick up those 3rd and 2s with his feet. On a 1st down and 10, an RPO, he decides to take off. And all of a sudden, instead of him getting tackled by the first guy, you look up at 2nd down and 1 because he scampered out of bounds after making 2 guys miss. Those kinds of plays that are just jabs to the gut and wear down a defense and a morale for a team are really the biggest concerns I have. I don't think the crowd will really bother Florida State. I could be wrong, but I really don't think that's the case. So we'll see if I'm right or if I'm wrong on that. But it's kind of interesting to me because Florida State is just like anybody else. They understand what's going on and how many people are talking about they're not playing good football. I think they kind of moved away from that last week. And hopefully for them, they can figure it out. But I think Florida State's going to be in a pretty good spot with this game. We'll see. But to win, though, you still got to make special plays. And I don't know if I trust the offense enough and the defensive line to be consistent with staying in their pass rush lanes. I think they'll get some sacks. I think 3 is a pretty conservative number even because I don't think SMU's O-line is going to be able to contain them. But I do think they'll give up a few explosives as well. And that's where I think Florida State is most definitively at a disadvantage. SMU has a lot of speed on offense, quarterback, running back, and receiver. And they've got RJ Maryland as well. RJ is a very talented guy. Tight end, he might be the guy that is the most difficult to figure out how they're going to use him. 13 catches, 191 yards, 14.7, and 1 touchdown so far this year. Somebody like that just getting one clear look at a pass where somebody's a little out of position is my biggest concern. So with that, I have a final score prediction of SMU 24, Florida State 20. I think this game will literally come down to the last minute and a half or so, and we'll see if Florida State can muster a drive to make it happen. But right now, to be really honest with you, I think this is a game, if it wouldn't surprise me at all, if Florida State was really in the lead for the vast majority of the game. But do they find a way to hold them off if the offense bogs down because they don't throw it in the middle of the field? Not concerned too much about it, but it could eat them up later and later into the game. That's another concern. I like SMU in a close game, but don't be shocked if FSU wins if they can throw the ball. That's the bugaboo. You got to find a way to do it, especially in the middle of the field so those safeties don't creep down. Florida State has had a huge problem with that all year long. So with that, thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. I truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles football with me. Please hit that like button, hit that notification bell, and quite honestly, I want to hear your comments. What do you think about why Florida State does or does not win this game? What do you want to see from Florida State regardless in terms of the players playing and everything else? I think this is an opportunity for them to kind of show, hey, we're back a little bit. Not beating SMU is the same as winning a national title or anything, but it would give some credence to the program kind of leveling out and not taking on water. They cannot lose a game badly again like they have in terms of how they looked. That's something else, but I don't think it's going to be that way. I think it will be a close game. It'll be pretty entertaining. More defense than offense because I think both teams have enough speed on defense. They'll at least make some plays. I'm not super impressed with SMU's defense, but I think Florida State's offense will probably shoot itself in the foot quite a bit too. That's what it's done all year long. So we'll see. So anyway, once again, thank you very much for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Now go check out Locked On College Football with my guy Spencer McLaughlin next. Everybody have a good one, and I will see you on Saturday.